Welcome to the Jeffrey van Leeuwen podcast, episode 8. Today, I'll be talking with Haley Starrett, a senior account executive in the logistics industry, to unpack the complexities surrounding the 2024 United States port strike. We delve into the dockworkers' demand for wage increases and a ban on automation, and we also discuss how the media portrayed the situation. Our conversation examines the real-world implications of automation and artificial intelligence on the workforce, highlighting the fears and challenges faced by workers in an era of rapid technological advancement. Finally, we share our experiences with the Peterson Academy, an online education platform that launched with pre-enrollment in August 2024. And for a quick few seconds, I would like to mention today's sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Ubaid, a talented designer who helped me create a lion logo made out of polygons. He managed to give the logo a modern and dynamic edge, and I'm planning on using it in the future for the podcast. If you're interested in enhancing your brand with a modern logo design, I suggest you look at Ubaid's work. You can find the link in the description below. Before we dive in, I want to thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing or following the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube. Leaving a comment or review is also a great way to help out. And as we're just getting started, every bit of support truly makes a difference. Thank you. And let's get started. Here is Haley Starrett. Let's start with the port strike that's currently going on in the United States. So we are living in a time where people are afraid that the adoption of automation and AI will replace people's jobs. And the port strike that started this month, I think is an example of that, where next to an increase in salary over the course of a 6-year contract, another demand was the ban of automation for port work. Well, let's talk about the impact of automation and AI a little later and start with the port strike itself that took place along the East Coast and the Gulf Coast of the United States. Could you give me a summary of what happened?
Yeah. So the dock worker strike, I believe, started about a month ago. I'm not sure. But they were unhappy with their wages and they were working an insane amount of hours. I don't remember the name of the organization, but the leader of their union essentially was fighting for them, saying that they were fighting for a raise. And the media that was reporting on it made it sound like was painting them as if they were just greedy, wanting more money, but they're out there working in really dangerous conditions and they hadn't received a raise in a while. So the strike was just to, fight for their raise. I believe when the strike actually took place, it only lasted a day or two. And then they settled on, I believe, a $4 an hour raise annually. But the initial uproar was these dock workers are already making $150,000 annually. They're just greedy. The West Coast docks are already using automation, so why can't the East Coast docks, follow suit? And a lot of rhetoric surrounding people being replaced by automation to essentially shut them up so that they won't go on strike or cause any of these issues. The problem was with the portrayal of the media. Like, these guys are out there working a lot of overtime. That's what is getting them this $150,000 salary. They're not working classic 9-to-5s and making this much money. Like, they are earning this money and they're working in dangerous conditions. And so I just didn't really like the portrayal that the media was giving to these people. And I think the strike, in my opinion, I was in support of it because this is how product travels across the world. These people are keeping all industries alive with the moving of these products and stuff. So I thought it was a pretty encouraging event, and it looks like they got what they asked for. I think they got a little less than what they asked for, but I think in any strike situation, that's the goal. You ask for a little bit more and then you compromise. So I think it turned out well, and it didn't last long enough for there to be an impact in the supply chain. So I think that was a good thing as well.
So I believe the organization that you were mentioning, the labor union involved in the strike, was the International Longshoremen Association, the ILA. And I believe the party that they were negotiating with to get the bigger raise, which is the organization in charge of the actual docks, is called I believe, the United States Maritime Association, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I
Well,
think that's right.
regardless, yeah. So before we started recording, you mentioned already that certain articles in the media didn't sit right with you, and an example that you gave. Two examples that you gave was that the articles were framing the dock workers' demands as a 77% wage increase from the start. But you also pointed out that some of the coverage focused on the 150K salaries. And I've read into that statement, and it seems that those figures are indeed, like you said, not from 9 to 5 jobs. They require significant overtime, up to 100 hours, which is at least 100 hours a week, which is what Harold Daggett, the president of the International Longshoremen Association, said. Yeah, what do you think about that? What do you make of that information? Because I believe the regular 9 to 5 salary is somewhere around the 57,000 range, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds about right, especially in America. It actually might be lower. But that's what my big issue with the framing of this narrative was, that yes, $150,000 is a lot to a lot of people, but framing it in this way is making the reader assume that these people are working 40 hours a week getting paid $150,000, and they're
Right.
greedy in asking for a 77% raise. Well, if you break that down, the majority of that 150 is made up of overtime. And then the 77% is accumulation of what they're asking for over 6 years. So if you break that down, they were asking for a $5 raise annually, which is like on the higher end of a hourly waged job raise. But like I said, you go into these negotiations asking for more than you would actually accept, and the conditions that these people are working. A $1 to $2 raise annually is standard in a lot of blue collar jobs like this. So I think when you have a massive group of people working in these conditions, and if you understand the importance of their role, if they don't work, the whole world pauses because they are moving the product that keeps everything alive. I think they just wanted everyone to realize that, hey, we have a very important job. We are expected to be treated as such, and that's why we're going on strike. I mean, I'm all for it.
Do you think that that message that they wanted to give was received properly? So aside from the agreement that they got right now from the negotiations, are there some other things that they wanted to communicate? And if yes, have they landed?
I think, unfortunately, with the pace of the news cycle, like the week it was happening, I think it was huge. I think it got a lot of people talking, which I think is great. Unfortunately, I don't think it's much of a topic to talk about today, but I do think that the touching on automation was a big deal as well. And another thing that bothered me a lot was the comments of a bunch of these articles and videos where robots don't go on strike or something of that nature, saying that, like, just get these guys to be quiet and automate the docks like they are automated on the West. So that bothers me a lot, because the benefits of automation are not going to be passed on to the people that the people that have these jobs that the automation is replacing. So I think we need to be careful with these sayings that we just throw around, like automation's going to make life easier. It's like, not necessarily. Who's installing the automation, and what's their what's their motive, because most of the time it's money, and they're not going to just give that money away to the people that their jobs are replacing.
And what do you think would happen if the development of automation technology doesn't get implemented in the eastern side of the United States? So let's go with the idea. So let's go with the demand for a second as a brain exercise. They demanded a complete ban on automation for port work. If they got that demand approved, and I'm not sure if they got it, so maybe you can tell me that as well. But what would happen then? You think? What would the effect of that be?
If they got the demand of automation being banned on the port?
Yeah. So if no automation can happen anymore at the east of the United States.
I don't necessarily agree with the automation ban. I think we need to slow down before. I think that's a conversation for the future after many other conversations take place, because like similarly when a company buys another company, the layoffs that happen, or like the when you find a massive department that you no longer have a need for, what do you do with those people? And we're in such a capitalistic world that who cares what you do with those people as long as we're making money? And I think that the human of the, like, realizing that we're talking about human lives needs to be a big part of the conversation, because yes, I think automation is a great thing, but I don't think we're in a position, I don't think we're in a mindset or a time to be compassionate to the human with it. I believe that if they come in and automate the East just like they did the West, all these people would just have no jobs. I don't think they would help them. You know.
What do you think? What do you think the solution of that is? So this is not a new topic. This has happened for at least, I think, a couple of 100 years. That things were automated and improved and made more efficient, and people either had to change their focus on what they did as a profession, or they were left behind to look for something else. And that is happening right now again, because of automation, and even more so because of artificial intelligence at the moment. What do you think the solution to that is? So if we implement automation in this case, once again in the ports of the east coast of the United States, what is the solution for those people?
That's where I don't have an answer, because going back to looking at each other as a human being, I actually had a realization very recently, because when I was right out of college, I worked in food plants. So every day I worked on like the admin side of things, but I worked closely with line workers in plants. And every day I saw people putting bread on sandwiches for 8 hours a day. And I was like, that is terrible. Like, that is, those people are robots. Like, they're just, I would hate to have that job. And to me, it felt like a demeaning job for a human to have, because I feel like humans are capable of way more than just doing that all day. But I was talking about it with a friend, and she actually said that some people, that's all they know how to do, or that's all they are capable of, and that doesn't decrease their value as a human. So I think there needs to be these simple jobs for people that are handed less desirable cards in life. So I don't really have an answer to what if automation can replace all of these monotonous, seemingly pointless, valueless jobs, where will they go? I think that's kind of, I think we need to step back and realize that everybody has a place on the earth. Like, sure, there are jobs that nobody wants to do. So what can we do to lift those people up? Like, maybe we could, offer, I really don't know, because like when you want to give a person a chance to pay for their own life, make their own way, but if putting bread on a sandwich is literally the only thing that they're qualified for, I still think they deserve a job, and I think they deserve a place in society. So I think that's the conversation that, although like automation. The utopic idea of automation is for people to work less, but I just don't see with the capitalistic society that we're in that being the answer. Like the big wigs are going to implement all this automation, make all the money, and then the people that are being replaced aren't being thought about.
Yeah, we have to be really aware that we don't forget about them and have mechanisms in place to keep them on the ship and move forward, instead of forcing them to sit at home or forcing them that they can't provide for the families anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the potential solutions I see is education. I don't think you can do much. Look, so I think as a society we are developing. We are progressing. So we are developing new technologies, which make sure that old technologies become redundant. So people that specialize in those old technologies, they don't have a job in air quotes anymore. And a classic example of that is, for example, the smartphone that you have in your pocket right now. Back in the day, 100 years ago, you had like these manual telephone switchboards, right? So if you wanted to call someone, your call would go to like a center where a person would manually connect you to someone else. But then all of a sudden, we invented automatic dialing systems. A person in that specific role was no longer relevant. And this is a very nice example because you could take that person and educate them to be a support engineer, right? To provide support for the new automated dialing system, or to give them specialized technical skills so they could, support the network, or do some other form of engineering on it, technical maintenance, things like that. But that requires education. You could take the same person and make them way more effective in the sense being, there for every unit of work they put in, the result is multiplied, because obviously a support engineer that supports a automated network can provide way more value than a person who is manually connecting call to call. So what do you think about that?
Yeah.
As giving people education in order to do something else that is more valuable, I suppose.
I completely agree. Because it's inevitable, like, improvement, innovation, and I don't think we should halt innovation just because some people who are less qualified than others need a job. I 100% agree that we could lift them up to do other things. And I think maybe if we, like, while the conversation of automation is happening, alongside that, we could say, okay, what jobs will automation hopefully replace? And then what jobs can we point the people that it will replace towards? So these factory line workers, probably none of them are actually enjoying their job every day. So I don't think they would be upset if they had an option to go somewhere else. How could their skills be used in a different way that automation is not close to yet? And then we could point them in that direction. I think that would be a good start to a solution. Because I'm not arguing for a ban on automation. I think if we can replace a dangerous job with a machine, absolutely. What I am concerned with is the rate we're doing it, and are we taking care of the people first? But I think kind of trying to forecast where automation is going, what jobs it's replacing, and how can we uplift the people that it's replacing and point them into a direction where they're still valuable, or they can go and maybe even make more money doing something else.
Yeah, or just doing more meaningful work. Providing more value for every unit of work that they put in. What was the so obviously I'm in Europe, so I'm looking at this from a distance. What was the general sentiment over there? So just in the general public regarding the whole dockworker strike.
So I come from a southern state, so that's pretty conservative, and then I'm in a western state right now, and it's pretty equally split. So I'm getting a lot of my feedback from just comments online, and so, like, historically, my community is very pro working class. like we support the people that make the world go round, the mechanics, the farmers, etc. So on that side of things, it was like, give these people what they want. Come on now. But I understand the other side where it's like, listen, we have robots that are doing the exact same job on the other side of the country. Why can't we just do the same thing? And so I think for the most part, it was like supporting the dock workers, especially because the time we're in right now in the United States is insane. Like everybody's coming together on the fact that the government kind of sucks. So I think that's one thing we're closing in on agreeing with each other on. And I think that's all we're hungry for in the United States is something, one thing we can come together on, because everything is so divided. But for the most part, I think it was a positive reaction to, or for support of the dock workers, and then a positive reaction to the negotiation coming to an end.
Okay, so you think that the general public in general was in support of what the dock workers were asking for?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because the media then,
right,
according to what I understand from you earlier, painted a completely different picture.
Oh,
Those two
yeah.
contrast with each other. Why do you think that is? What's the idea there?
Well, I think the media, I think more people are watching independent media these days, which I think is wonderful. And I think the traditional media is just grasping at straws at this point. So much so that I think they're also starting to like pivot in like last ditch efforts to keep an audience. But I definitely think there's a narrative that they're trying to keep up with. But I think people are opening their eyes. Like people watch podcasts and YouTube and TikTok over the news, like at a massive rate. So
Especially
that's what,
everybody younger than 40, I think, or 50 maybe even.
yeah, even people in their 40s and 50s have TikTok, and like, it used to be like, kind of you were embarrassed to say that you learned something on TikTok, and now it's just a normal thing. Like people didn't take TikTok that seriously a few years ago, and now it's like
Right.
there's some good information on TikTok. Like, of course, you have to, make sure you don't believe in everything you read online, of course. But yeah, and then long form content like podcasts and YouTube, I think you don't get that on traditional media, so you can get some context and the whole story. And I think people are just losing faith in traditional media, which I'm totally fine with.
Do you think they're too far gone?
I don't know. I think traditional media and traditional entertainment is kind of headed out because of streaming services, and everybody's like, people find their favorite creators online and they'll subscribe to their Patreon, or they'd rather pay for, which I also think can be dangerous. Like you're if you only watch a certain handful of people, you are getting a swayed story. But I think that's the case in traditional media. Every news story sounds exactly the same when they're reporting on it. So, but I think it's easier to kind of diversify your intake of media online with all of the options. So I think you're more likely to get sides of every story online than you are like on a news station.
All right, we got cut out for a little bit, but it should be working again now. Yeah, so the last thing we were discussing was about the news in Netherlands. So what I noticed during the pandemic times was that there was a switch towards the typical pandemic narrative. And since then, it seems to me like they are politically leaning on certain subjects. So, for example, big events in the world, they seem to be framing the stories that they tell in a certain way to spread a certain narrative. And what I found really refreshing lately, and especially in that time when I was still looking for something to get honest, neutral news, because the only thing I wanted to know is what's going on in the world, right? I don't want bias, I don't want opinions, I just want to know what's going on. And back then, Twitter, I think, was a decent medium for it, as long as you knew who to follow and who to check out. But then people were getting banned from there. Also, people that you and I know, and Jordan Peterson is a very big example of that, which was a shame. So I'm actually quite happy
People
with
start getting
it being.
banned.
Yeah,
That's when you know there's a problem.
yeah, you do. So I'm personally of the opinion that it's a really good thing that that Twitter changed to X, and that right now there seems to be, at least to me, no censorship going on, and everybody who has an opinion, as long as it doesn't break a law, because there's certain things that you cannot say for obvious reasons. But I'm quite happy with X how it is currently. So that's what I'm currently using as one of the news sources.
Yeah, and I don't use X a whole lot, but I hear the community notes are a good thing. Like, well, with any platform that big, like, and Peterson talks about his goals with the social part of Peterson Academy, how to kind of manage it as it scales. I think so far the community notes is probably the best they are able to do with the size. I did find it interesting. I hesitate to bring this up because I can't even remember what he said, but Elon was talking to Tucker Carlson recently about X, and there's like different laws in different countries. So for each country, they're following those laws, and the United States and their free speech, they're trying to shut him down on a lot of things, which that's another, like when people start to get banned, there's a problem. So yeah, the censorship, that's a big issue, but it's also when a platform is that large, and like we've experienced on Peterson Academy, like there can be one person that ruins it all for everybody. So how do you manage that on a large scale? So it's a question I don't have the answer to, but it's an interesting one.
I saw a clip of that interview this morning. I haven't actually seen the interview yet, so I'm quite curious about it. But one of the clips I saw was a clip of Elon Musk laughing that if Donald Trump doesn't win this election, that he's going to go to prison. They're going to come after him.
Yeah. The first 3 minutes of that interview were hilarious. I watched just the first few minutes a couple of times because I'm just like, this is hilarious. But he's like, yeah, I probably won't see my kids if Trump doesn't get elected.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you make of Elon? Just out of curiosity, what do you make of him?
I really appreciate his kind of, he's opened up in the last few years, I guess. He understands that, like, he's a smart guy, and I think he can see where the world is going if we don't, get a hold of certain things. And I like his the attitude he had on that interview. I appreciate. It's like, yeah, we're kind of doomed, but at this point we can laugh about it because we're all going down, or we can do something about it. So what do you guys want to do kind of attitude, which that's another thing. Like every day you can be overwhelmed because there's so much bad happening in the world. So how do you, put a smile on your face and live your life, because this is the only life we get. So it's kind of encouraging that, like, this guy, he's a very powerful person, and he understands that there's a lot of things that we need to change. But I like how he's not trying to fearmonger everybody. He's like, listen, come on. We don't have to be scared, but we should make some changes.
Yeah, for sure. I especially respected the tenacity that he showed of bringing up a solution to the government system to make it more efficient. He called it, I believe, a government efficiency program or something like that.
Yes.
Oh, and my gosh. He discussed that, in the interview with Donald Trump, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, you need to go back and watch the Tucker Carlson interview because he talks about it as well. And when he talks about when he took over Twitter, they fired like 80% of Twitter, and then they started doing better, insinuating that he would do the same thing to the government, because he talked about some like federal employees. There's like 400 or something. And he didn't say it word for word, but he insinuated he would do exactly what he did with Twitter to the US government, which I think to a majority of America sounds like a beautiful thing. So,
Yeah, I think that might be one of the reasons why they might come after him if if Trump doesn't
yeah,
win.
yeah, but it's kind of inspiring. Like,
Hmm.
I understand people's issues with Trump, but like when he got shot and he stood up, like that's inspiring. And then Elon saying, "Yeah, I could go to prison," but he's not. That's not like shutting him down. He's still speaking, so that's inspiring. Like these people have a lot to be afraid of, and they're still talking. So I think that's huge.
So I'm of the opinion that he is one of the most important people on the planet right now
Mhm.
living. I'm of the opinion that he's going to go down in history as a remarkable person, as a person who brought civilization forward many
Mhm.
steps. I believe it's not. There's a whole lot of reasons for it. You know, the rise of the electric cars, the tunnels that he's building with the Boring Company,
Mhm.
and the biggest one of all is the fact that he is trying to get people into space in a sense of colonizing space, which drastically reduces the chance of humans going, extinct the moment something happens to Earth.
Mhm.
So there's a whole lot of reasons over there to really respect this guy. And to be quite honest,
Mhm.
I'm also of the opinion like a guy like this, you shouldn't bother him with mundane things and
Mhm.
interviews like he had with Don Lemon that were about,
Oh
well,
my gosh.
topics I don't even want to bring up right now.
Yeah.
This guy shouldn't waste his time on stuff like that.
Mhm.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, his time could be used way more wisely. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Yeah. The Twitter example, this is, but he also does it with a sense of humor, and I really love that
Mm.
about him. He's a gigantically efficient guy, which I have an IT background, so I'm project manager right now, and I also see the value of efficiency. So I'm balancing in my work, for example, I'm balancing human needs, but
Mm.
also, progression and moving towards a goal. And sometimes, one loses to the other. You have to find a balance in that. So I really enjoy that specific perspective on his work because he's the kind of guy that just walks into, Twitter with a sync, with the comment, let this sink in, which I thought was really hilarious, by the way. But he just looks at the company and looks at what works and what doesn't work and what it can
Mhm.
be. And the idea that 80% of your staff can be fired, and then after that, the company runs better, freedom is being restored, people are being happy, people are returning to the platform, the amount of users skyrockets.
Mhm.
That says something.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And that's another version of like I guess the automation conversation like 80% of your
Mm-hmm.
positions are not necessary, like okay, yeah. And then it's objective. There's no narrative behind it. Like he's just like what will make the company better. This isn't a political conversation. There's no narrative, there's no agenda. It's will it be better or will it be worse? And the results speak for themselves. It's not like get your feelings out of the conversation. This is about the 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 business, the company, and the decisions he made obviously improved the company. So I think people we're just emotional, and we're that the time that we're in is like you can't say this, you can't do that because you're worried about people's feelings, but it's just like the proof is in the pudding, he did it, it worked extremely well, and like you can't deny that.
I wonder what your take on this is. Because if you put those two situations next to each other, so let's once again go back to the dock worker strike. You have a situation where they have to, well, go on strike in order to increase their wages, and they are very afraid of automation replacing their their job. And I think rightfully so, because it is a legitimate threat. There is a legitimate reason to be afraid that the job is being replaced, at least as it currently exists. So if that automation gets implemented, your point is completely valid. We should not try to do whatever we can to make sure that these people will land on their feet and can still provide for their families. And we already discussed education, so re-educating them to a different kind of job or to a higher position where they can work more abstractly or provide more value in some shape or form. That might be a legitimate way forward. But if you put that situation next to the Twitter situation where 80% of the people are being fired, well, it's not really the same situations, but there are some parallels. People who are no longer needed are being thrown out. So how do you, in your personal opinion, how do you balance those two? So how do you balance firing people who are no longer needed? Yeah, and
supporting the dock workers, but being okay that he laid off 80% of Twitter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's a great question, and I kind of realized that as I was saying it. But I think a company, the Twitter, they put themselves in a position to create all of these unnecessary roles. I don't know the details of Twitter, but it seems like they got themselves tied up into this narrative, and they were operating and creating all of these unnecessary roles. And then Elon came in and realized that they're no longer needed. The dock workers, like they're essential, but they can be replaced by automation. So it is not necessarily the same, but it's not like we're putting dock workers on these ships to unload these containers for no reason. I can imagine working in corporate, there was a lot of people going into Twitter or working remotely, just moving their mouse all day, I'm not saying that's the case, but corporate, there's a lot of Twitter's not the only massive corporation that I know for a fact has people working there that are not doing anything. I work for a decently large corporation, and I can guarantee you we have a percentage of employees that sit around and they do maybe 2 hours of work every day. So I think any corporation, you're going to have that, but I don't know how I would reconcile, like, hold up on the automation because dock workers need jobs versus, hey guys, pay these people even though they're not doing much work because they also need jobs. So I think the level of work that they're getting done on the dock worker side is like larger and more meaningful, but also, people need jobs. So if a company can afford to throw away a bunch of money keeping remote workers employed, that's their prerogative. But Elon came in and that's not his.
There's actually a question that I don't have an answer to, and that is what role does personal responsibility play in this story? Before I ask you that question, let me flesh it out for just a little bit. The world is changing in this constantly. We get new technologies. Whether it's automation, whether it's AI, or whether it's the telephone example that I gave earlier, where the manual switchboards are being replaced by automated guidance systems. So, technologically speaking, we are moving forward. If you as a person stand still and don't educate yourself in order to go with your times, well, I don't think it's a good long-term strategy to think that your job will stay the exact same over the course of 50 years. I think that's well, you might try, but I don't think, generally speaking, that's a good idea. Where does personal responsibility start? Because if automation gets implemented in your company that endangers your current role as it is, you can strike against it, but you can also accept that the change is happening and move along with it and try to find a place where you can fit in that new landscape, which also might provide opportunities, because if it's a new landscape that's being created, there might be roles available that haven't been filled yet.
And I think regardless of how large the company is, there's always room for a conversation of creating a new role, which I think people need to open their minds up to as well. I think, like, when I was in college, it was kind of starting to pivot towards that. Like, don't just the idea when I was in college was still like 70-80% just get a degree and go get a full-time job. Like, who cares
Yeah.
what you do? That just, you need a full-time job. Um, and I think as I was in college and getting into the workforce, that idea was changing. Like, no, you can pursue your interest. There's like unlimited opportunities to make money. You can like literally do whatever you want. You can monetize almost everything. So you don't have to get a standard 9 to 5 job, and you can be comfortable with that and still feel some security in that. I 100% agree with you that it's on the individual to take responsibility for whatever changes come their way. At what point, I'm not sure. I don't think it's smart for anybody to rely on the job that they currently have as security to get them to retirement. Like, that's a very much like whatever generation my parents are in. Like, they got one job, they work that job for 30-40 years, they retire, and then they're retired. I don't think that's a thing these days. And I also can, like, I had this thought recently, like, I I think people are responsible. Like, you can only take advantage of free will if you're going to educate yourself and you're going to be aware. Because if you're going to stick your head in the sand and you're going to follow you're going to go through the motions every single day, you are going to be susceptible to marketing and influence, and you won't be making any of your own decisions, whether you know it or not. Like,
Right.
unless you pay attention. So I think those go hand in hand. Like, you can take advantage of the change that's inevitably going to happen if you educate yourself, you keep learning, you keep developing your skill set. Same with being able to take advantage of free will. You'll make your own decisions if you're aware of your surroundings and how influential the outside world is. And then if you don't do that, you will experience a layoff or a strike situation. You won't have any options. And what do you do then? And then also on the influence side, you'll buy whatever product is shoved into your face, and you'll do whatever they tell you to do. So at what point is it your own responsibility? I don't exactly know if there's a line. I just think it's always something to be aware of.
Well, it certainly doesn't help when you stick your head in the sand pretty much and hope that nothing will ever change and keep doing the same thing that you're doing, because there will be a moment that layoff will come because the company is going to move forward, and so will everybody around you pretty much.
Right. Like, are you going to be the one that's complaining, or are you going to be the one trying to find a solution? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That last thing that you said is actually very important. So being very solution driven, think in solutions, not in problems. I think you and I both have examples in our career where and we are also susceptible to do it ourselves. You know, I also do it sometimes, that I'm complaining about something that's happening instead of actually thinking about a solution to it. But generally speaking, you know, one of the things that I also focus on is making things more efficient and making the goals that we set for ourselves of a higher quality, of a higher standard, so that we all improve and we all get something better at the end of the road when we are done with a specific project that we are working on. And generally speaking, there are definitely personalities that are averse to that change for whatever reason. You know, it might be because it's technically different, so there might be a learning curve in it. That they need to adapt to something new, which is a legitimate thing. You know, people generally speaking don't like change. That's just the way people are, I guess. But it might also be the example that you gave earlier. So if you have people that work 2 hours per day but get paid for 8, and all of a sudden something is getting more efficient, that forces them into a position of changing. That might be threatening.
Yeah, I think that's also a problem with the pay structure. I don't think hourly versus salary is the best that we can do. I don't know what is, but obviously when you offer someone a set salary, you're not going to be getting the most efficient work. And then when you offer someone an hourly salary, they might work slower to get paid more. Like, there's pros and cons to both of those. I don't know how you would incentivize optimal efficiencies, but I think that's everything is just so complex, and especially when it's at such a scale for like an entire country or an entire world. Like, how do you even begin to think of solutions for some of these problems?
Do you think that so one of the solutions that is usually being incorporated within companies is a bonus structure? So if you so one way of doing that will be that at the beginning of the year, we have a conversation with each other and we define, okay, what are the set goals? What are your goals going to be for this year? And with
Mm-hmm.
every one of those goals, if you hit them, there is a specific bonus behind that. And it might be any goal, it might be any bonus. It might even be something else than monetary. I don't know what it might be, but that provides a direct incentive in order to perform above your salary, pretty much. What do you think about that as a potential solution?
I think that's a wonderful solution on the individual level. You would have
Mm-hmm.
to, like, your manager would have to sit down with each individual person and do that. And I think uh, I think the solutions on like a one team, like very small scale, I feel like that would work wonderfully. But when you scale that, like, how do you ensure that the managers are having honest conversations with their team?
Mm.
Um, and then what are the exact marks that these people have to hit to qualify? Yes, you met these goals, or no, you didn't meet these goals. And obviously with every industry that's going to be different. I'm in sales, so it's very numbers driven, but
Mm-hmm.
numbers can be manipulated, and we see that all the time. Like, and that's one thing I love about my current job is your promotion isn't based on your manager's opinion on you. It's
Mm-hmm.
strictly based on performance. And like, your numbers are there, they're on the screen, the reports come out weekly. But if your manager likes you, they can push you some accounts, which can increase your numbers.
Numbers.
So there's
Mm-hmm.
still ways to manipulate that. But I think on a small scale, defining the goals and then having conversations in the middle of, hey, this is where I expected to be, I'm not there yet, what can I do to change? So it's a hard system to scale, I think, especially in this world, because no one's really that loyal to a company anymore. And I understand, like, there's there's reasons not to be, but when you're not bought into your career, there's always a possibility that you know you have other options. So you sometimes it's easy to fall into that. I'm just here for the paycheck. I'll do minimum required, maybe a little bit more, so I'm not on the chopping block. But um, I think it's a good start to define the goals, get the goals, and be rewarded for meeting the goals.
So I believe, and you're gonna have to correct me if what I'm saying is not correct. But I believe there's a fundamental difference between the employment contracts in Netherlands and the employment contracts in the
Mm.
United States. Because if I'm not mistaken, and I'll lay the Dutch version out later, if I'm not mistaken, in the United States there is no protection or very limited protection from people to get fired. Well, maybe I should just ask the question instead of laying it out myself. Can an employer just fire a person just for the heck of it? It can be, of course, goal driven, like you are not hitting the numbers that are being set. Then you could make the argument that there's cause. But can an employer there also fire you for just any reason? We implemented a more efficient system, so now the work that you were doing is no longer needed.
Mm.
Can that be a reason?
Yeah, I think it's more common as a layoff of a department, or a percentage of a department. I don't think they can do that, like, one person at a time. If it's just like, if they're gonna say we're firing you for seemingly no reason, I don't think that would go over well just one person at a time. But there's like layoffs are very normal of groups of people for seemingly no reason. But if it's just going to be an individual, most corporate jobs have like a I don't know what you call it, but it's a period in the very beginning, like the first 30 to 60 days where they can let you go for no reason.
Well, the
And then
trial
after
period.
Yes, and then after that, if you're just wanting to fire one individual, you have to kind of build a case, like they showed up to work late this many times or whatever. You need some sort
Right.
of
Okay.
yeah. And then usually in my experience, if you're not performing well, the manager will talk to you and say, "Listen, you need to do better," or you'll get put on some sort of performance plan, and those either like result in the person just quitting because they don't want to be there anymore, or
Mhm.
they pick up performance, they start doing better, or they don't pick up performance and then they get fired.
Right, okay. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to have to look into this a little bit more to find exactly what the difference is. But my general feeling, and that's why I brought it up, was that in the United States, it's easier to fire a person than it is here in the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, generally speaking, there's two types of contracts. You have your temporary contracts and you have your fixed contracts. And a temporary contract is literally what it implies. You have a contract for 6 months, 12 months, or something like that. And after that time, you have to negotiate an extension or you're going to separate ways. But if you have a fixed contract, then there is no ending time. So you can just stay for an indefinite amount of time at the company. And firing someone with a fixed contract within the company is quite challenging. You need to have real good cause for it. So structural misbehavior, or I'm not even sure. So I would really have to look into this, but I'm not even sure if not hitting your goals even is a valid thing, because then you also get some kind of performance increasement course or something like that. But for example, I don't think that firing 80% from Twitter would have gone down well here in Netherlands. I
I
don't
see.
think that would have been possible, because the alternative, I think, and like anybody that knows more about this should definitely correct me about this, but I think the Dutch version of that would be something like we found 80% of people that are not doing the jobs that they should be doing because of all kinds of reasons. So we need to find them positions within the company that they can provide value,
Oh.
or we need to do something with them to re-educate them or something like that, or we need to buy them out. So we need to negotiate with them to leave the company, unless there is proven misbehavior in some
Do you
shape or
guys
form.
have unemployment?
Like unemployment numbers, you mean?
No, like so if we get fired or we get laid off, we can go apply for unemployment, and we can get paid weekly based on because every okay.
Yeah,
So
we do have that.
that was a big thing. I mean, that's always been a thing, but it was massively used during COVID because anybody with a traveling job or a lot of people with remote jobs just got laid off. So my company, I was traveling like 100% of the time when COVID hit. So I got laid off. And the company paid us for one more month after they laid us off, and then everybody just applied for unemployment. And the stimulus turned out to be more than what most of us were getting paid, but that's what we like. Anybody that got laid off would just sign up for unemployment, and that's still a thing, but it's not as much as it was during COVID. But layoffs are huge in America, like, and it's usually once or twice a year, depending on how the company's doing. Like massive companies do layoffs all the time, and it's
Yeah.
usually for some vague reason, like you mentioned earlier, like the the company reevaluated and we no longer need this position or something. It's not. It's something like that.
I'm actually gonna look this up. This is quite interesting. So the difference in layoffs in the Netherlands and the United States, and how easy it is to do. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say about that. Yeah, okay, here. So the process of layoffs in the Netherlands and the United States differs significantly, mainly due to the differences in labor laws and social protections in each country. Here's a breakdown of the key differences and the ease of conducting layoffs. So it starts with the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, labor laws heavily protect employees, and most workers have contracts that can only be terminated under specific conditions, and the process for layoffs is regulated by strict legal frameworks. So there's a couple of examples here. Well, one is a notice period, another one is severance pay. So employers need to get approval either from the employee insurance agency, in Dutch that would be the UWV, or the cantonal court to proceed with layoffs. The grounds for right, okay, yeah, that's it. The grounds for layoff must be well founded, such as economic necessity or long-term inability to work due to illness. So
Oh,
employers actually can't do massive layoffs. They have to get approval from third parties. So they can't decide it
in
just by themselves. And
in the
another
Netherlands?
one, yes.
Okay.
So another one, collective dismissals. If an employer wants to lay off 20 or more employees within a
Mm,
3-month period, the employer must consult with trade unions and the work council and notify the
mm.
UWV, which is the employee insurance agency here in the Netherlands. And then United States is more of a at-will employment in most states.
And there's a lot of different types of employee. You have
Hmm.
your, like, I don't know, your permanent, whatever you mentioned, like work indefinitely, and then you
Hmm.
have your contracted workers, and then a lot of trade workers like electricians, contractor or construction workers. Um, if there's no work, like if the company doesn't have a project for the next 2 or 3 months, they'll employer and the employee will agree to fire the employee so that they can apply for unemployment in the period where there is no work, and then when
Mm.
when work comes, they'll just rehire them. So that's a negotiation, like, I think more on the individual level. Like, I think smaller companies do that, and then you have
Is
your
is
like
that is
10.
that legal?
I don't know. It happens a lot.
No, because the
um
reason that I'm asking is, so I think that if the employee by themselves quit, they can't apply. But when the company
Correct.
fires them, they can.
Correct. Yeah, if you quit, you don't get unemployment. But I think it's like a mutual understanding between the employer and the employee. Like, hey, I'm gonna quote unquote fire you, so because we don't have any jobs for the next 2 months, but give me a call in 2 months after you've collected. Like, you can collect unemployment while I don't have any work for you, but as soon as I have work for you, I will give you a call and I can hire you back.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I
Fair
don't know
enough.
if that's legal, but they do it.
It's probably if it's not legal, it's probably very hush hush and whatever.
It's like
I think it's
frowned upon.
yeah, and it's the best solution, I guess, for both parties anyway.
Right.
So yeah, I don't see much harm in that. I don't think what the problem with that would be. Aside,
Yeah.
well, you could make the argument that actually, yeah, you could make the argument that the taxpayer then is paying for the salary.
Yeah, but employees have to pay into unemployment. Like, the employers have to pay into unemployment. And
Right. Okay.
the amount of unemployment that you are rewarded is determined on how long you've been with the company that fires you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I worked for the same company as my brother once, and I worked there for 2 years, and he only worked there for 6 months. And then when we got laid off during COVID, I got a bigger check than he did.
Hmm. Right. So how does it work if you work right now 10 years for the same company, and if you leave the company for another one, and after 6 months you get fired, do you get unemployment based on those 6 months from the second company, or will it go back all the way from the first employer as well?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I've only
Okay.
ever experienced unemployment once, and it was with my first, like, full-time job.
Hmm.
So I only had part-time work experience before that. I imagine if you quit, you're out of luck when it comes to unemployment.
Right. Yeah, so the system in Netherlands, and I've never been unemployed, so I've never had to use it. But I believe the system in Netherlands, which is once again the UWV, is that something along the lines of if you for whatever reason, don't have a job anymore, except when you quit yourself. So you have to be fired or laid off in some shape or form. You can go to the UWV, which is either a government organ or a sub-government organ, to get something like a percentage of the average of your salary over the last couple of years, something like that.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter where you worked. So if you switch jobs like 7 times in the last 3 years, that's completely fine because you'll get an average of all those.
So
That's pretty much how it works.
every employer is paying into unemployment to some degree.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. I'm not sure if it comes directly from the employer or it's just general from tax money. I'm not really well written in that, but yeah, it is being paid for. Yeah, 100%.
That's cool. Nice.
So people that don't have a job, even though they, for example, didn't work for multiple years, there is still an absolute minimum amount that the UWV can give them, as long as they can prove that they are actively looking for something. You know,
I was about to ask.
Yes. If they don't do anything, I believe you don't. Yeah, once again, I'm not really sure about what I'm saying right now, but I believe that if you can't prove that you're looking for something and you just want to sit at home all day long for whatever reason, I don't think you get something. There are some things that you have to do. Yeah.
Same over here, but the proof of looking for a job is very easy. Like you just have to submit pretty much a job, like, hey, I submitted this job application, which easy. You said there's a minimum. Is there a maximum to how much unemployment you can earn?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I'm not sure. I told you just now that it's an average based on the last couple of years. I think I'm pretty sure that's the way it works. I'm not sure if there's a cap in it.
There is a cap over here, so that's why I was wondering.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That would be very because if there's some kind of CEO, right, that earns like 30 million a year or something like
that. He could retire on unemployment.
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I would be very amazed if there wasn't a cap or shape or form. Yeah, I think so. That'd be very weird.
I think there is a group of people over here that just live on unemployment. I can't prove that, but I think there is.
Why do you think that?
Well, in COVID, it opened a lot of people's mind. A lot of people like had only ever heard of unemployment, didn't really understand. And when I applied for unemployment, I definitely thought it was a temporary thing. I was immediately looking for another job because I didn't know how long it would last. And I still don't know the answer to this, but the attitude around unemployment during COVID was like, oh, this is going to last forever. Like, you don't need to look for a job at least for like 6 months. And I was just like, there's no way that's real. Like, but I was getting paid. Like the money was coming in, and then when I realized that, like, yeah, you have to prove to them that you're looking, but it wasn't, and the requirements might have gone back to normal now that COVID's slowed down, but they were just throwing out money and people were like, yeah, I'm not too worried about it. So I don't know factually if any of that's true, but based on everybody's attitude around it at the time, it seemed like everybody was just treating it as free money, which is never a good thing.
How has that shaped your view of the willingness of people to put in work?
So I can only say this from my perspective. I had a pretty easy job right out of college. It wasn't like easy, but compared to other jobs, it was easy. And then when I got laid off, I was like, I have to find a job immediately. And then the next job I found was lower pay, but more work. And that's where I think my work ethic really strengthened. I think the job after my job from COVID. But then my current job, which is my first sales job, and it was a little bit more than I was making at the previous job. And so I was like, I'll do anything to keep this job. I'll do whatever they ask me to. I was ready to work. And then I went through training. I took training very seriously. I did like everything I was
Did you
told to
like it?
do. Oh yes, I love it. But training happens every quarter, so
Mm-hmm.
I trained and then I started working, and then one of my coworkers was a trainer, so she would talk to me about training even after I was done with training, and she would say that every class the work ethic is lower. Every class like is going going to be younger and younger than us because it is an entry level position where you start at this company, the training that I went through. So every, I guess, class, there's 4 classes, 4 training classes a year, and she said she's been a trainer now for like 3.5 years, and in the first 6 months of her being a trainer, she recognized the pattern of the work ethic decreasing with every class. And so I've always heard that this generation just doesn't want to work. And I understand that maybe they don't want to work for like unless they're getting paid fairly. But I do believe that the attitude towards big corporations is um, no loyalty. Let me just see how much I can get out of them. And to a degree, I understand that perspective, but I also think that um, it's a balance. Like I do think that you need to have a work-life balance, but I do also think that if you want to put yourself above everybody else, you're going to need to work harder, obviously, whatever that means for you. But it was interesting to kind of have a direct sight into my coworker as a trainer. She saw it firsthand. Like every class got a little bit lazier. I was like, that is so interesting.
What do you think changed as she talked to you about that?
I don't know if we haven't had any sort of discussion on our theories of why things have changed, but I do think the market has changed the attitude. Like when I was talking about my parents, they got one job, they worked that job for 30, 40 years, and then that's just what their generation does. My generation, you get a job in the corporate world for a couple of years, you can take those skills to another company and bump your salary 10, 20, 30 grand instead of marginally every year with the same job. So I think that's one aspect of that's driving this change. And I it you can find jobs where you make a ton of money and don't necessarily do a ton of work. So, and I think sales is a massive example of that. Like it is hard. And at times you are doing a lot of work, but sometimes you get lucky and you find some opportunities that will really move the needle in your career, and sometimes they're less work than the smaller opportunities. So I think the job hopping became more normalized, and people's attitudes towards larger corporations, they kind of took the power back, which I'm not totally against, but think I think corporations can take control over that if they just are honest with themselves, saying, "Listen, we value like if you value the people that you've recognized as valuable employees, having conversations with them on what will it take to get your loyalty, because contracts aren't they're a thing, but they're not like in my industry in sales, you can up and leave
Mm-hmm.
whenever you want. You don't sign contracts.
Mm-hmm.
um so I'm specifically speaking on the perspective of my sales job. But I think corporations look at employees as replaceable too often, and people look at corporations as just money hungry, and there's no loyalty. So I think both sides of the coin could work together and fix that, but that's just the attitude that the market has created.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a huge change myself over here. So, just for context, how old are you now?
28,
28. And when did your career started?
22.
22. Okay, so a good
But
6 years.
at this job, it started 3 years ago.
Right. Okay. So I'm not sure if I got the exact dates correct, but I remember a time, and this was in 2014, 2015, something like that. It felt like companies were actually doing you a favor if they would have provided you with a fixed contract. So that was a thing back then over here. So you would have like a 6 month or 1 year contracts, and you were just praying that
Mm-hmm.
you got a fixed contract after that. Because a fixed contract back then in the Netherlands was really important if you wanted to, for example, buy a house, because a bank will
Mm-hmm.
look at the kind of
Mm-hmm.
contract that you have. And temporary contracts back then were not as valuable as fixed contracts, and which is logical because the bank, just wants to have assurance that you will get a specific amount of income over, the
Mm-hmm.
next 30 years or something like that.
Yep.
So it was harder to find. It was harder to find a job, and therefore companies could hang a fixed contract over you, over your head.
Mm-hmm.
And they almost, and this is at least how I experienced it, they tried to sell it like they were doing you a favor by handing you a fixed contract.
I believe
Those
that.
times, yeah, those times are done over here. And right now there's a situation. I'm not sure, and this is I would like to know how it is with you, at least in the region where you're living. Right now, there's a lot of branches in Netherlands that there is a big lack of workers in all different levels of careers. There's a big lack of manpower, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you're noticing as a result of that is that starters are coming in, fresh out of school, 20 years old, something like
Mm-hmm.
that, and they're demanding 5,000 euros a month for starting positions.
Mm-hmm.
That raises my eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
I get it, because the market, well, to some degree, I don't think those people will get very far. But regardless, the market allows it because there's a huge pool of available jobs for quite a limited few of people. So obviously, people take advantage of that. Long story short, I noticed a shift from very little jobs being available, because you're talking about like 5, 6, 7 years after the financial crash in
Mm-hmm.
2007, 2008, to right now where it's opposite. People have a lot of choice going for them, and they take advantage of that. How is that over there?
I think we're experiencing the lack of workers as well.
Hmm.
And I would agree with you that people are their expectations are higher with the availability of the jobs. I don't know what companies are doing about it. In my company specifically, there's one position that is severely lacking, and it's it's an account manager role, but they just tied like a sales aspect to their requirements, which is, in my opinion, insane. They have their responsibility to retain business, and now they're being tasked with bringing on new business, which is a responsibility of the sales team. And then the sales team also has some account management responsibilities. So I think in my company specifically, they need to clean up the responsibilities of each role and leave them to that responsibility. And I think you will have more successful employees in both departments. Um, but the lack of manpower is definitely a thing. I don't know what these people
Hmm.
who are expecting $5,000 a month are doing in the meantime. But sure, I don't think they're making 5,000 now, but I think it's been a product of, I think that's the case in everything. Like, it's always so one end of the spectrum or the other. I mean, I've always thought this about America. Like, we're not very good at balance. We always have to be so far on one side or the other, or like there's no meeting in the middle. You have your opinions, and that's that. It's like, this was reminding me of something. The oh, I mean, I guess it's just classic supply and demand. I guess, like you mentioned, the housing crisis. Like, is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? Is it an
Hmm.
employer's market or is it an employee's market? And I don't know how to get that harmonious balance but it's always a shift. I feel like it's always either the employers are in a position to hold something over your head, or the employees are in a position to expect the world. So I don't know, but I think we're in the same position that you described.
I think a very important thing to realize, and I don't think that's, especially with the younger generation, I don't think many people realize that, is that yes, salary is important. 100%. That's your livelihood. That's your way to provide for your family. But there's also such a way as developing your career and developing your skills. Salary is not everything. And like you said, you can have an employees market or an employers market. And those changes happen every now and then. The moment that a change happens and the moment that the pool of available jobs decrease, you will need to do more work, you need to put in more effort, and you need to prove that you are more valuable than others applying for the same job in order to get that job. If right now you raise the bar too high just for salary's sake, I don't think you focus on what is really important in the long term. I think you focus on the short-term money, which I think will bite you the moment that change happens back to an employer's market. Being valuable and being skillful then is way more important.
I agree, because like, what happens if they give you this $5,000 a month job and then they have a layoff in 6 months?
Exactly, and let's combine it with a extreme example of a financial crisis, whenever that may happen. Then yeah, good luck.
I think so teaching people how to market their own skills needs to be like basic education. I think that needs to happen before college. And then I think we need to redefine the value of a dollar, like of money. Like, everyone looks at money as the definition of success. And like, obviously, like, you have your people that it's not all about money, but at a zoomed out view of the world, it's about, like, everything is defined on money. Like, you can, anything you look at, like, how old are you and how much money are you making? Or, how much money, like, how much more money are you making at this job than you were last year? Like, it's all, and I think that's another thing that people need to redefine, like, what is success outside of money. And when we can focus on that a little bit more, worry about materialistic things so much, we can actually evaluate our skills more accurately and then determine how successful we are compared to when we started.
And one of the questions you can ask yourself is, what is success to begin with, and what do you value more, and what is meaning, and where do you get meaning from?
Yeah.
Is that just your salary, or is there something else that you find more meaningful?
Yeah, because when I graduated, all I wanted was a job, a 9-to-5 job with benefits. And looking back, I'm like, that's easy. I got that. Like, right out of college, I got a job. But it was just a job. Like, I had no interest in what I was doing. I was like, okay, I'm getting paid. Heck yeah. And essentially every job I've had since then has just been based on my experience from my previous job. So I never was really in a framework of thinking, what am I interested in? And I've only now kind of explored that. And now I'm like, okay, now almost 30 years old, I can put together a plan of, here's some directions I want to go in while I'm, and I think that's another thing that the 9-to-5 job was good at for a while. Like, you get a 9-to-5, you get stable income, and then you develop your hobbies, or you put time into your interest outside of that 9-to-5. And then one day, if it's a business you're starting, you start the business on the side, and then you transition it into a full-time thing where you can provide for yourself. So I think there was a time where that was a thing. Like, people still wanted that 9-to-5 for security, and on the side they pursued their own interest and built that up until they could sustain themselves on that. I don't know. I mean, I imagine people are still pursuing their own interest with whatever means they're capable of getting. But I don't know if that's so much so the case, because in the corporate world, climbing the ladder, that's the definition of success, and it's pretty sad and looks like I feel like we're in a simulation sometimes.
Yeah, getting all the way up to level 10.
Yes, like, oh, let's circle back to this, all these corporate terms. Everybody's taking everything so seriously.
What is next for you? Because you mentioned that over the last 6 years you've been able to, well, at least that's what I got from your story. You were able to lay down a foundation to work on, and now you're good. You know, you're grounded. You have your thing going pretty much, and you have multiple directions that you can take. What are those directions? What are you looking at currently?
Yeah, well, and it's not something I'm like super passionate about, but just kind of becoming my own boss, or putting myself in a position where I don't have to clock in and clock out and sit at a computer 8 hours a day doing something I don't necessarily care about. But I'm in a position to purchase some land and build either not really rental properties. I mainly the idea is a storage facility or a parking lot for campers or trailers. And that's kind of what I'm looking at now. So I've always wanted to live on some land, be able to garden and grow some food on my own. And then I just recently got the idea of like the storage facility or parking lot. It works very similarly to Airbnb. That's what I'm headed to now. And then just the pursuit of education or continuous education with Peterson Academy. And I've never read so much in my life. Like I've never read a full book like in a long time. I haven't read. So it's just been very encouraging and like I said, I'm not super passionate about creating a parking lot or a storage facility, but that's the kind of like passive income that I feel like I'm capable of. I don't think I would be interested in starting a business or a store or anything like that, and then maybe pursuing something similar to you, like conversations like this or something I'm really interested in. So just finding people that are interested in similar topics or being willing to pick each other's brains or what's your thought on this or anything like that.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like you're well, you have some fun ideas in there, I think, regarding the getting the land and getting something on that and making sure that becomes a passive income source. That's very fun, and at the same time, you're saying that you want to keep growing, keep learning, keep seeing what's out there. So you want to go on adventure, pretty much. And this is actually where we met. You and I met on Peterson Academy. What is your idea on the academy so far?
I'm very much enjoying it. When it first launched, I was like on it all day, every day. You know, when I wasn't at work, I was just like, what is this new thing? It's so interesting. And I still think it's very interesting. I haven't really participated in the social part recently. It's hard to keep up, and I think they need that needs to be developed a little bit more, but I still really enjoy it. People are were you a part of the original crew?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
from the very first day it was available, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, so the torchbearers.
Yes, the
um
torchbearers.
yeah, and I don't mean to sound like pretentious or anything, but the amount of people that were on the site when that was a thing, I was like, this is perfect. And now it just feels overwhelming. Like, I think they need to get the social part figured out because it's hard to keep up with the people that you follow or I feel like I made some friends and now they're lost because I don't know where, like, it's hard to keep up. But outside of that, I am loving everything. Production quality is insane. Like I said, I've never read so much or been interested in looking into these topics, and I didn't think I was actually going to sign up for it because of the cost. And my dad was like, "Yeah, you have to do this." So I was like, "Okay," and I did. So thanks, Dad, for the push.
Yeah, it's been quite amazing to experience so far. And I think so for everybody who is listening who doesn't know the Peterson Academy is a online university that at this moment is something akin of masterclass.com. So it provides multiple courses in video form where people that are an expert in all kinds of specific topics provide lectures or courses actually that contain lectures about everything that you can think of. So from Christianity to philosophy, to Plato, to Nietzsche, to all those kinds of things. And there's also a social element in there, a social media platform. That's what we were just referring to with the torchbearers. Everybody who became part of the original that signed up during the beta phase, pretty much. So the first month, I believe it was in August, got an icon next to the name, which is like a torch. So that's those people are being referred to as torchbearers. And I believe it was actually quite bizarre to see. I believe between 20 or 30,000 people signed up during that phase, which was way more than I would have expected before the launch. I knew it had some traction. So on social media and in different articles, it was quite clear that a lot of people were following the Peterson Academy. But 30,000 people worth? That's a lot, especially in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, to sign up for something that you're not really sure what it is or what, and it's a school, but you're not gonna get a degree right now. So like, it's kind of amazing to me that many people signed up, because it's just like another streaming platform, I guess. You're just paying for content right now. So it's really interesting to see that many people signed up for something that hasn't quite been defined yet.
Yeah, sure. It's actually quite. So I've experienced with Masterclass, and which I said is just it's another platform in which you can find video shaped content that talks about everything. For example, Gordon Ramsay's on there. Talking about cooking. Chris Voss is on there talking about negotiation. So you have all kinds of different things. Dan Brown, the writer from the Da Vinci Code, is talking about how to write. So it's all kinds of different content on there. And Peterson Academy is kind of the same. So the moment I signed up for it, I expected to primarily focus on the for like 90% focus on the actual lectures and not so much on the social media aspect of it. Because I'm not a social media guy. I don't have Facebook. I said earlier in this conversation that I use Twitter, but I use Twitter as a news intake, not to actually engage with other people. I don't have Instagram. I don't have TikTok. I almost don't do any social media at all. The only thing I have is LinkedIn, which I use for my career, and that's pretty much it. So with that in mind, I didn't expect to engage at all with social media. But in the end, it turned out that I spent like 80 or 90% of my time on the Peterson Academy, actually on social platform. It's been quite a delight to see, to engage with people about all kinds of different subjects, and some really interesting questions were being asked. It sounds very silly when you say it out loud. Questions like what is love, or what is redemption, or some religious questions like what does it mean to be saved, stuff like that. It sounds very mundane when you say it like this in order, but the conversations that those questions sparked and what it actually means, it has been quite a sight to see, and very, very interesting. Very interesting to engage in. And generally speaking, the reason why it's so interesting is that people generally seem to be very open and honest. And they are honestly trying to find the truth, honestly trying to find the answer without, coming in with a predefined ideology or something like that in order to find the end. They're honestly looking for it. They're discussing it together. For some reason, it's not self-explanatory at all. It's not obvious at all that, it doesn't generally happen like that.
Yeah, it's not like toxic or mean-spirited as a lot of social media can be. I wonder if it's like, it's got to be some sort of like mutual understanding or mutual motivation the reason that people are even on the site. You know, they're here to learn or whatever the reason may be. It's not like, I guess social media in general, like the platforms you discussed, TikTok, Instagram, maybe Twitter are more, you know, personally like self-indulgent, like let me market myself in a certain way, or I'm here for the dopamine, I want the attention. And
Right. Yeah.
maybe that's not the case here. You know, people aren't posting selfies every day on Peterson Academy, but um,
Yeah, you certainly have those people also.
right. But the reaction that you're mentioning, like the engaging, people are very engaging, open and honest and positive. That's been my, like, I'm blown away at the positivity and the encouragement that strangers are offering each other. Like, there's a guy that opened up an art studio because people were giving him feedback on his drawings. And
Andrew.
there's, yes, I'm like, that was like 3 months ago, and now he has an art
Hmm.
studio. That's insane. That is
That's
so.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
And then the people that aren't very positive are getting like responses along the lines of, if you're looking for a friend, or if you just need someone to talk to, like no one's being very defensive or cruel. It's a feeling I can't explain either, but it's a very positive feeling, and I'm very happy to be a part of it.
Well, generally speaking, those social media platforms, so Twitter and Facebook, they're free. So the moment you use
Yep,
them, you can be guaranteed there's people on there that don't have your best interest in mind. They
very
just want to
true.
troll or spread a narrative or something like that, which is very
Hmm.
easy. You know, if you are a programmer, for example, you are a good programmer, right? And you are able to write bots that can engage with Twitter, and you can do that on scale.
Mm.
You can fire 100,000 bots at the same time and push. Let them do whatever you want. It might be canceling someone, it might be attacking someone, it might be spreading a narrative, it might be spreading hoaxes, it might be doing anything. With Peterson Academy, that doesn't really work because, there's an entry fee. You pay €500 for it, $500 for it. So that already filters out, well, let's say 95% of, the people that have bad intent. There were a couple of cases on the Peterson Academy, and don't worry, I won't call names, but there were a couple of
Mm.
situations also on the Peterson Academy where things were getting a little bit out of hand every now and then. For
Mhm.
example, there was a guy who was writing in all caps all
All
the time, and he
caps.
was yeah he was called the all caps man.
Mhm.
So all caps man was just spreading. I don't even know how to describe it. He was just angry. He was, he was just very angry, and people were actually, like you said, they were engaging with him. Like, hey, dude, hey, all caps man, if you want to talk, it's more than fine. They were engaging with
Right.
with his with his post in a very helpful, supportive way. In the end, it didn't work, and I think he was kicked off the platform, um,
Yeah.
or just took a refund or something like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, it happens.
Yeah, like I I guess people of that personality, they're looking for a certain reaction. He didn't get the reaction he wanted, and maybe that's the reason. But
Hmm.
yeah, multiple posts, but multiple responses in a positive light. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
what do you need? I'm here for you. Not get out of here. Like in I could understand if everyone was like, you don't belong here because you're ruining it, or whatever the response may be, but it was not that at all. So it was so interesting to see, like, you don't see that on other social medias. But you're right, I think the having it behind a price definitely is a good way to ensure that the majority of the people that sign up are there for the right reasons. And that's
And they want to be
and
there.
yeah, like they want, yeah, they're paying a big price for it. Yeah.
What are some of the highlights for you on the social media environment?
I enjoy the positive reactions to everybody's posts. And I like, so there's this, since you're not very involved in other um social medias, I'm curious, because a lot of social medias, you have to kind of censor yourself. Definitely cannot be your 100% self on social media. And if there's you have to be kind of politically correct if you don't want to have people attack you. So I think that's one thing I've enjoyed a lot. You can kind of say whatever you're thinking and people will respond in a thoughtful way on Peterson Academy. Like you can say some kind of out there things. Like I insinuated that this dock strike was oddly timed with with
Oh, I
where
saw
the
that. Yeah.
United States are, and then I didn't get called like insane. So if I I see people expressing honest, interesting thoughts on TikTok and Instagram, and the comments are just calling them crazy or far right or whatever the case may be. And it's like that uh, preconceived notion is in your brain, whether you know it or not, when you go to post. And I'm still kind of filtering that out when I want to post on Peterson Academy, because I'm I'm in the mindset of posting it on another platform. Like I already know what kind of reactions I'm going to get if I'm honest about what I'm thinking right now, and I have to understand. I have to remind myself I'm not on those platforms. Like this platform is full of people who are actually interested, and they'll ask, like when I posted about I think free will is earned, and maybe earned isn't the right word to use after reading the comments, but it wasn't like an attack. They were just like, I agree with you in some sense, or here's my questions on why you would say that. It wasn't like you're like, I feel like if I posted that on another platform I would get destroyed or yelled at. So it
Hmm.
was I'm that's one thing I'm really enjoying about Peterson Academy. Your thoughts can be a little more free because people are more open to actually understanding what you're saying instead of picking apart every word and trying to turn it against you.
And the effect of it goes both ways because you are more willing to share your thoughts and you are open to the criticism that comes towards it. Not really the criticism, but the additional context or feedback or other ways of looking at specific things, which also makes you more inclined to listen to the people reacting to you. So it's a two-way street,
Yeah.
which is very, very beautiful to see.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
there was a, for example, well, let's not delve into this topic too far, but there's a very explosive topic, which is abortion.
Hmm.
And you have the pro-life and you have the what's the other one? Pro-abortion, I think it's called. Well,
Pro-choice.
anyway, pro-choice, yeah, pro-life and pro-choice. It's a very explosive topic, but
Hmm.
it was conducted on that platform in the utmost respect, and people were honestly debating with each other without trying to take each other down, which was
Right.
insane to see.
Yeah. Imagine posting that on Twitter.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done. But that's what
Yeah.
like you're going into it trying to, or people on Peterson Academy, it seems, are going into the conversation trying to 100% understand where the person is coming from and
Yes.
ask questions and respond, and also give their opinions, and the people that are engaging are of the same interest. Like, I want to understand what you're saying. I'm not looking for a specific word that's going to offend me or someone else. It's not
Hmm.
like the clickbait phrases, the classic surface level debating that happens on other social medias. Like, you can master that in a week, but the conversations that are being had on Peterson Academy are coming from a place of genuine interest and understanding, or yeah, wanting to understand.
Yeah, and there seems to be a fair bit of self-correction going on. So I haven't seen a single instance where a moderator came in to say, guys, stop it, or just delete a thread
Mm.
or something like that. There seems to be a lot of self-moderation in the sense of if people make statements that are, short-sighted or painful or hurtful or whatever, usually what you see happening is that people react to that properly and don't take them down, don't attack them, don't attack the person, but attack the statement, and try to correct that way. And then
Mhm.
it's over. Then the next threat that comes out is just good again. There doesn't seem to be a constant fight going on,
Hmm.
or constant hostility going on. It's very self-corrective.
Yeah, I don't think people are as defensive as they are on other social medias. I think
Hmm.
other social medias have created a atmosphere of like expected perfection. Like you cannot change your mind. If you said something a month ago, but you changed your mind today, everything you have ever said and are going to say is irrelevant and no longer credible in the
Right.
eyes of Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. But I think that's another massive problem and another reason we need to look at each other as human beings, because it should be a well-known fact that you change your mind, you make mistakes, and you learn. So that seems like common sense, but the way that the other social medias operate, like you're not allowed to make a mistake. You better read every word you're about to post 100 times before you post it and make sure you've never
Hmm.
said anything contradictory to it, and you're never going to say anything contradictory to it in the future. But I agree with you that um and then I think people are just holding themselves to a higher standard on Peterson Academies. Like, I really want to think this through, or I get the sense of like people are treating each other the way they want to be treated. Like, okay, like we'll have a conversation, we'll get to the point to where we can understand what they're saying and not, like try to tear anyone down in the process.
What are some others of your favorite threads on the Peterson Academy social environment? What are some highlights for you?
On the social side,
Hmm.
oh, have you seen the guy that's posting the virtual mixers, the weekly virtual mixers?
I have seen them. They're at week 7 now, I believe.
Yeah, I signed up for those and I've joined 2 or 3 times. And those have been really cool as well. They're very informal. They're just like a Zoom call. But people from all over the world, and I think the largest one I joined was about 7 people, so they're pretty small, and everybody gets a good chance to talk. And at the end, the organizer has a list of questions, and he breaks them up into easy, medium, and hard, and then you just pick a number, and he asks you a random question. So it's a kind of a fun game at the end of every session, and we get to know each other a little bit more personally, and those have been so fun.
Are they being recorded and published?
I don't know if they're being recorded. I don't believe so. I don't know, but
Hmm.
they're weekly and they're at different times every week. So for the first 2 that I joined, they were both on the same, like they were on a Saturday evening, but the last 2 invites that I've gotten have been on a Sunday. So
Hmm.
I've only joined 3, but there's
I haven't joined any of them yet. I've definitely seen the call outs for it. Maybe I'll sign
mhm.
up for the next one. I think I saw the message coming on earlier today, and I believe the new weekly mixer is tomorrow or the day after, something like that. So I'll see if I can sign up for it.
Yeah,
Might be
I
fun.
think he reposts or posts his announcement pretty frequently, and then I think it's
Hmm.
just like a mailing list that you sign up for, and he'll email you the next invite.
Right. Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, I'll check it out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Where do you hope the academy is going? So let's say a year, maybe 2 years from now. Where do you hope it stands?
Um, so I noticed that they launched the monthly payment plan, and I feel like I'm just gonna pay for this forever. I don't like just sign up for the monthly payment and just keep it as my subscription, like delete Netflix or whatever. But um, I'm excited to see the social aspect grow to a point where we can interact more like this, or like the weekly mixers. They mentioned some study groups. That would be really cool. And then Michaela posted something about a cruise, and I think that would be insane. I really hope that happens, and I'll definitely do whatever it takes to attend.
Yeah, I saw
But
that as well. And apparently the reasoning for that is that cruises are relatively cheap to do. It's relatively cheap
Mhm.
compared to alternatives like
Mhm.
hiring venues or whatever to get cruises ongoing. So
Mhm.
they found this. I'm not sure what they looked at, but they found this as the most reliable and most affordable way to get as many people as they can together to give them lectures and to spend some time together, getting to know each other. And honestly, I agree with you. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think the possibilities are endless.
Hmm.
I see a lot of people talking about accreditation as well, and I don't.
Yeah.
I agree that that's important in some aspects. I think I don't know much about the education industry, but if the in my opinion, if they're wanting to make the change that they're trying to make, I think they need to avoid accreditation and just continue to work directly with employers. I feel like that would be a really big, like, I told you so to the universities. Like, I did this. Look at what I did without accreditation, you know. But if it's required and people want it, I understand. But I feel like the point that they're trying to make would be a stronger one without it, you know?
Well, it's certainly interesting to see where it goes. But so far, it seems to be going really well. I'm not sure how
Mhm.
high the number is, but it must be at least 30,000 by now, since that was the number
I know.
from the beta time. It is insane.
Yeah, you
Um,
mentioned that earlier. I wish there was like a tab on the site to
yeah,
see
like I
how
said,
many yeah.
yeah, yeah. I know they mentioned it in the podcasts quite frequently. So I believe that if you listen to the latest podcast, you often find he's
Mhm.
often talking about Peterson Academy pretty much in his
Mhm.
podcast. So,
Yeah.
all right. Perfect. We skipped over a couple of topics that we were planning on discussing, including the
Mhm.
spirituality thing and how we deal with deep conversations. We didn't really have time for that today. Maybe that's a
Right.
good one to keep for a follow up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Awesome. I think this is a good place to wrap it up then for now. I think we covered a lot of a lot of ground. What do you think?
I agree. It was a good conversation.
Awesome. It was an absolute pleasure having you on, Haley. Thank you so much for coming on. It's really,
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Amazing. Take care of yourself.
You too. See you later.
And with that, Haley Starrett has left the conversation. To support this podcast, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Also, check out our sponsor in the description below. Thank you for listening, and take care.